Hello and welcome to road.cc. Today we're talking about bottom brackets and how to stop them clicking. So the first thing that you need to be aware of is that many clicks can originate at different points on the bike. I've seen them at headsets, saddles, seat posts. Make sure that all of your bolts are torqued to the correct manufacturer settings before you go ahead and take apart this. The first thing to do is start with a really clean bike. So make sure you give it a wash. That way, when we get the bottom bracket open, we're not going to be contaminating the cups. This is quite a tool-intensive job, and the tools do vary between different bikes and different bottom bracket standards. So we'll take you through the tools that we're going to be using for this PressFit 30 Cannondale Supersix Evo. Okay, so here we have the tools that you will need for this bearing install. First, we've separated them into two sections. We've got the tools that you'll need for removing them. We've got a 10mm Allen key, a Cannondale crankset removal set. We've got an 8mm Allen key. We've got a BB30 bearing removal tool, and we've got a giant hammer. Over here, we have the new bearing. We've got Park Tools RC1. We've got Park Tools AP1. We've got two types of bearing press. So you've got a basic one from Wheels Manufacturing. This does a range of sizes of bearings. These can be used for pivot bearings, headset bearings, etc., and also bottom bracket. If you really have a lot of bearings to do, then you might want to get a bigger set like this. This will cover pretty much everything. That's also from Wheels Manufacturing. And we've also got all of our bearing shims. Okay, so I have removed the crank and the wheel. I've braced the frame with my arm, and we've got the Park Tool BB30 and PressFit 30 in this instance. Bearing removal tool inside the frame. We've also got the big hammer, so all we've got to do now is give it a whack, and hopefully the bearing should come out with the bearing sleeve. So here we go. So we have just got the bearing there. So we've also got to get the sleeve out. What we'll do now is we'll take the other side out, and then we'll try and get the sleeves out as well. So now, because the cup didn't come out with the bearing, it sometimes does, it sometimes doesn't, we've got a cup removal tool. So we're just going to thread this in. That goes in at the back. You pull it through, it locks into place. Make sure it's seated properly. Just check in there. Yeah, we're not hitting any wires or anything like that. I've got my Di2 internals in there, so be nice and careful. Again, brace the frame and simply that's not moving anymore. 1 minute. Bingo! So now that we've got the hub shell all prepped, it's nice and clean and free of any oil and things like that. You can use acetone to clean this down, but a regular degreaser will work just fine. Just let it air dry, and once it's completely dry, we can go on with prepping it for the bearing installation. What we've got here is Park Tools AP1. This is an adhesive primer. You've got to use this with their RC1, which is the bearing compound. So all that we do is we're going to spread this in on the cup shell here. We're also going to put it around the bearing cup here. So this part of the job is relatively time critical. This stuff does start curing as soon as you expose it to the air. So we need to be relatively fast. I've got all of my materials around here. I've got the press and I've got the bearings at hand, so I don't have to move too far. And once you've got the primer on all the surfaces, all you do is then take the RC1, and it's quite thick, and you just want to put a layer just around the first edge of the bearing cup. Being careful not to actually get it on the bearing itself. So once that is done, now all we're going to do is we're going to take our bearing press and we're going to press this into the frame. So once you've got it set up like this, we've got no bearing in this side. We're just using the flat edge to press against the actual frame. And all we do is turn really nice and gently, and it will take a little bit of pressing for this to actually go in. But you should see that some of the green fluid is just catching out the sides there. Once it's pressed up against the frame, you don't need to go mental. It just needs to be sat flush against the frame. And then you can take the non-dry side press out. So with the second side that you put in, you are actually pressing the bearing into the frame, but also the two bearing cups together. Now, one will lock into the other, and there's a male and female part, but this does make it slightly trickier and slightly more difficult just to get the bearing in. But with that slid into place, we are pretty much done. And there we go. Okay, so obviously our system here is a PressFit 30 system, but your method for pressing in bearings using an RC1 and the AP1 is exactly the same for BB90, BB30, and BB86 as well. Anything with a sleeve and a bearing that gets pressed into a frame, exactly the same procedure. For a threaded bottom bracket, you shouldn't get too many problems, but if you are getting a little bit of creaking, then Parked will do a thread locker that will be much, much better for that. All you do there is apply the thread locker to the threads and just simply screw in the bottom bracket. All that's left to do now is clean up the area around the frame where the retaining compound has seeped out. It does show that we've got good coverage, so we shouldn't be getting any problems with these bearings. So let me just see how quickly that dries. We might have to scrape a bit of that off. So the AP1 does cause the RC1 to set pretty quickly. Nevertheless, don't ride it yet. We've got to put the cranks back on and give this just 24 hours just to all set properly. So it's a job that you really want to do well in advance of any events. So hopefully that is the end of my bottom bracket issues. If you've got a creaky bottom bracket and you just can't solve it, just get in touch with us. Or if you're really, really stuck, take it down to your local bike shop. They are the experts. Anyway, for more content like this, like and subscribe.